All right, guys. Welcome to the Deer Shot Podcast, presented by Siman Brothers Outdoors and the Leaky John Boat Company.
Your track job was the first fun track job.
Oh, that was the best.
That kind of like, I think part of my life was influeed by that night.
Looking back on it, my biggest regret was opening day. I knew where it needed to be. I should have just done a simple hanging bank off the corner of that field, and he would have been toast. But I didn't.
That was our first public land deer hunting trip, and it went extremely well. 5 years ago, we couldn't shoot a deer at 100 yards with a slug gun. Now you're shooting turkeys at 100 yards with a shotgun.
It was a 90-yard shot pass through.
And then you miss him 3 times with a rifle at 70 yards on video for the whole world to see.
That's what Caleb did. This is the first buck I've shot in over 10 years. And, not to get too crazy emotional about it, but like
10 years, no buck. All right, guys, Deer Shot Podcast, episode 59. We are coming at you live from Kentucky. Deer season has started, boys. Let's give a little toast. Deer season is back for us.
And the deer season fuzzies have started too.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The fuzzies.
Like the fuzzies of like almost killing a 150.
Oh,
I had some fuzzies tonight.
Yeah, we had some fuzzies tonight. We're coming at you live from the cabin here in Kentucky. It's Saturday night. We just got back from our first full day of hunting. The Born Again guys are here in Kentucky with us, but they're still out at their lease or their property, making their way back in. They're a little bit farther out than we are. Yeah. We're about 20 minutes from the cabin. They're 45 to 50-ish. So we're not camping directly on top of our land, which is it's not bad for us.
No,
our drive's nice and easy. But we got down here on Friday and did a little scouting, set up some blinds, watched some Packers games, the football game, which did not go well. The trip was going perfect until that.
Yeah, that was the doohickey.
Yeah, that was the first moment in the trip that didn't go as planned. I'm sure everyone that's listening to this that's a football fan already knows what happened. Packers lost in the last moments, and Jordan Love seems like he tore his MCL at this moment. Sprained his MCL, yeah.
So
not
he's
a tear.
Terrible.
Which is good. It's not an ACL, which I'm happy about. Sorry for any technical difficulties today. I'm running the podcast show because Isaac is not here. I got Ethan and Luke with me. Like we said in the intro, deer season is back. We are finally hunting. It feels good.
It felt good tonight. In Kentucky for the opener, it's like the coldest it's ever been.
Yeah, this is the coldest Kentucky deer season opener. I think today was like record lows. Overnight tonight's going to be record low temperatures. It's going to get down into the 40s. So we were setting up blinds on Friday afternoon, and it was 88 degrees, I believe, was the temperature. And when we hunt tomorrow morning, it's going to be 47, I think.
And anyone that's ever hunted Kentucky Open before knows it's hot, sticky, sweaty, bugs, mosquitoes,
ticks, everything like that. And
the whole 9 yards. And it wasn't like that today. It was really, really nice.
It feels like, to me, October 17th. It's like 40s, 50s, 60s, sunny during the day, but as soon as that sun goes down, temperatures drop real quick. The weather was
your nose gets a little bit cold.
Yeah, the weather was just perfect. We were still wearing, just a base layer and hoodies, no gloves, nothing like that. We weren't getting crazy. The hunt tonight was mid 50s, I want to say, temperature wise. But yeah, it was a good first day. We went out this morning, so let's rewind all the way. Got here Friday, went straight to the property. Ethan has 2 stands and a saddle platform already hung on this farm. It's a private permission piece that we have. Thanks to Ethan, he was able to build a relationship with the landowner. It is surrounded by public land. We're surrounded by public land pretty much on all sides, but the property itself is private and it has some ag, has green soybeans. Me and Ethan got down here Friday. Went straight to the property. Actually, we went straight to the landowners, talked with him for a while, played with his dog, Bluey, and then got the key for the gate, went to the property. And then because of the way the wind was coming this weekend, the stands are actually kind of out of play.
Yeah, wishy-washy.
And especially for a morning hunt, we'd have to go through all the ag to get into the stands, which just wasn't going to work. So me and Ethan set up 2 blinds. They're pretty far apart, both on different ag fields.
700 yards, I looked on.
It's 700 yards?
It's far.
Yeah, geez, I thought it was only like 300 or 400.
No, it's far.
700? The property lays out pretty big, obviously, if you can't tell. Ethan's blind was set up on a fresh bean field with a CRP patch and a pond, and then my blind was set up on also a fresh green bean field and a drainage ditch in between two green fields. There's a couple big sycamore trees in this drainage ditch. The drainage ditch is probably only 30, 40 yards wide, if that. And it's not very deep. It's probably only 8 feet deep from the edge of the field, but I'm on a drainage. He's on a pond in blinds. We have Luke here alternating between us as a cameraman. We're taking turns self-filming and being filmed. You guys glassed Friday night then after we got here and got everything set up. I came back to the cabin to start working on dinner we went out for dinner. I came back to the cabin to kind of get things settled up and watch football. You guys are glassing, but a huge storm front came in Friday night, so it wasn't a full glassing experience. Rain moved in quick. But you did glass some small. The deer that you guys glassed, we haven't seen yet today, have we?
Did not see them.
They weren't very big, though. The ones we glassed, not big.
Maybe 100 inches, maybe.
Okay. Maybe it was the one that was behind me today, possibly.
Possibly, but that's far.
The buck behind us today, did they have velvet?
Yeah.
The smaller one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The smaller one?
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Oh, it could have been.
The one last night did not have velvet.
Yeah, it did.
So before we get too far ahead of ourselves, they glassed Friday night. Nothing crazy. They didn't glass up any of our main shooters. To backtrack a little bit farther, Ethan's been scouting this property all summer, off and on. We've had cell cameras here. He came down, hung the stands and stuff. When he came down to hang the stands, he watched a bunch of shooters that night, spar and stuff, took some cool video. The cell cameras down here have been incredible. There's 6 shooter bucks that I would take that are using this farm, and then a whole bunch of smaller bucks and does. Didn't glass any of them up on Friday, came back here. We got into the Packers game, which started off really well, and then we lost power for a half a second here, and the internet went out. So we're scrambling to watch the game on our phones out on the deck for a while. With no service. We only got one tiny little bar here when the internet's out. And then finally, the game came back on, and then we ended up watching that. Born Again guys and Luke ended up going to sleep before the game ended. Me and Ethan made it to the end. Jordan Love.
Sad.
MCL sprain. Lost the game. Bad. It was bad all around at the end of that game. But got a couple hours of sleep. Woke up Saturday morning. We did do morning hunts. I know a lot of guys don't do morning hunts early season, but it's one of those when in Rome kind of things. We're down here for just a couple days. We got to maximize our hunting. So Ethan and Luke sat together. Ethan's blind. I sat solo in my blind. Your guys' morning hunt was pretty uneventful.
Yeah, we bumped some does off the field on the walk-in. But it didn't seem to affect tonight's hunt because there's still does out in the field. There's still small bucks that we probably bumped off this morning. But
yeah, I mean, if you're blind 700 yards from mine, that means the walk-in's over 1,000. Yeah, I'd say 1,000-yard walk.
Yeah,
pretty far.
Oh yeah.
And you're kind of taking this gravel road that's surrounded by CRP and old barns and homesteads, and the fields are kind of lower than the road. So the road's it's higher. And luckily for us, it's been downwind. The entrance has been downwind. This week based on the wind direction. You guys bumped some deer on the way in, and then you ended up not having any action from the blind at all that morning.
Nope.
We didn't hunt that long. We only hunted till, 8?
Yeah, 8 o'clock.
8-ish. Maybe even 9. Yeah, we hunted till 8 o'clock. I had a couple does actually come out and worked their way right down the field edge, and the one doe, you'll see it in the video, Deer Camp Chronicles episode 2, when it airs, the one doe is probably, inside of 10 yards, broadside, looking at me in the blind. They did a kind of a soft spook. They weren't quite sure what the blind was. They didn't notice it until they got probably 40 yards away. It was weird because it was 3 mature does, which we haven't seen that. We didn't see that group again this evening, but it was 3 mature does this morning. They were definitely within range, and we can take does here on this trip, but I wasn't ready to start butchering does and burning spots. And I'm glad I didn't based on what happened this evening, but, so the morning hunt was kind of uneventful. We stopped and grabbed Luke some more food because he's a non-wheat guy.
Yep. So I'm super difficult on these trips.
Yeah, he's one of those. We
go around what I can eat and what I can't eat.
So basically, we just let Luke do his own shopping on trips like this because he's got the gluten thing going on. Came back and it was Nap City. This morning. We got back here. We were probably laying down by 9:30, I'd say.
And it's funny because there's one couch and then there's like some chairs we can pull up, and it looked like little kids were having a sleepover.
Yeah. Ethan was on the chase. I pulled up a chair for my feet. Luke pulled up another chair and then used my chair for my feet for his feet. and we're basically snoozing off and on until Born Again came storming in from their hunt this morning. They just did more of and I'll have them on the podcast if they want to talk about it later. This might be kind of like a two-part. There might be a pause, and then you get Born Again's input later. I think they just kind of scouted this morning. I don't think they actually set up.
Watched.
Yeah, I don't think they actually set up and were attempting to kill deer this morning. They did glass a good buck last night that they hunted tonight, and I haven't actually got the full scoop. I got a message. They asked if we killed anything yet. They're about 25. They'll be here pretty soon. I guess they probably didn't kill anything. But we haven't got the full Born Again breakdown yet.
Yeah.
Not quite sure how their hunt went. But after Nap City, we ate some lunch. We actually had a nice... We went out on the deck with Born Again and had a nice couple-hour chat session, just covered a bunch of stuff. Recent topics, kind of talked about some of the stuff we're going to be doing this fall.
Yeah.
We're probably going to share another camp for at least a few days in Indiana. Not exactly sure when we will be there for that. It's based on Ethan's schooling, because Ethan's got schooling again this fall. But we'll shoot up there for a couple days, at least try to do some hunting. Then the evening hunt came. We actually went out kind of early.
We went out at like 3 o'clock.
Yeah, we left here
out there
around before
5
3
hours.
o'clock.
Yeah.
So before 3 o'clock, we left the cabin. Today was one of those red moon days, I guess. If you talk to any moon people, today was a red moon. So we wanted to get out early, and it was a kind of a marathon sit. We were hunting by 3:30, and we ended up hunting till a little bit after 8. So we sat almost 5 hours.
Yeah, last flight was 8:23 tonight. So
Yeah.
you guys had that encounter about 8:15,
It was probably a little bit before that.
wasn't it?
It was before that, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, we had a good solid 5-hour evening sit tonight. We had a buck come out early. Me and Luke.
Right when we got there.
Yeah, so me and Luke went to my blind this time. Ethan did not go to his blind by the pond. He actually went up in his saddle in the corner of this bean field that he had pre-hung before and finally got in some stand time. We had a buck come in real early. We were only probably there 20 minutes. So it was 4-ish. We had a young buck. We named him. It started off with his name being Rudolph, and then it changed to Randall. There's always Rudolphs and Randalls anywhere we hunt. But he came out and worked down. Yeah, he came out and worked down the line. Actually, kind of headed towards Ethan. Went back in, and then came out again later in the evening. We had some does come out across the field too, probably around 6. And I think the mature doe came out and instantly whoosh, locked on to our blind.
Oh, yeah.
And she closed the distance a few times a little bit, but never got within, I'd say, 70 or 80. And she never really spooked bad, but she definitely was staring down that blind.
She didn't like it at all.
She did not like it. And, if there was anything to learn from this quick little trip we did here, we got to bring the trimmers next time and brush those blinds in better. We didn't do too good of a job of brushing them in. We the blinds are the same color as the CRP and the brush in these drainages that they're tucked into. So we just kind of put them up in the tall weeds, and the weeds are coming up in front of it. But
They're
we didn't.
not used to seeing them.
Yeah, we didn't do a really good brushing. If we would have taken some of those logs that are laying around and leaned them up against and cut some bushes, we might have been able to get away with a little bit more. But they locked in instantly. Almost every deer locked in instantly on that blind. Even though we did have plenty of deer in range, they locked in.
Yeah.
And about this time is when you started seeing deer over in your saddle area.
I had a little 6-point come out 53 yards. Got some good video of it. Asked the guys if they wanted to do a track job tonight, and we decided to pass on it.
You sent out some feelers like, should I shoot him? Should I shoot him? We're like, nah, dude, no.
Little.
I mean, it was little.
Yeah, it was probably 60 inches. Maybe.
Yeah.
But it was still in full velvet, so it would have been cool. But
I'm glad you didn't shoot it.
So am I.
We'd still be out there messing around if you did.
Yeah. And it's 53 yards, so it's not like it's a
So it wasn't a chip shot. I never asked you how close it really
53.
was.
Stepped out at
Okay.
53.
That's pretty far.
Yeah.
Yeah, that 53 is kind of a poke.
And it's not a mature deer, so it's smaller. It's like a 1.5-year-old probably.
Yeah.
Very small bodied deer.
Yeah.
So like it's not an easy shot to take either.
After those messages were exchanged, we had Rudolph come by a couple more times. He kept circling around. He'd work his way closer to the
He
blind.
never went downwind of us, though.
No, so none of these deer ever smelled us, which was the nice part with the way the wind was blowing. He would get to 30 yards, stomp, snort a little bit, run off into the woods, and then come back out and do the same thing from a different angle. He was obviously just trying to figure out where we were. He was trying to smell the air, but we were well upwind of him, so there was no way he could smell us. So he never kind of caught a whiff of, or we were down. He was upwind of us. There was no way he could have got a whiff of us. He finally did work off completely. You had another buck come in, you said.
Yeah, another small 6-point, taller, tight 6-point, but another small velvet buck.
Did the buck we call Rudolph ever make his way over to you?
No.
No.
You ever see him though?
Yeah, I saw him in the distance.
And we had another buck working behind us. So we were on the edge of a field. Drainage ditch was to our left, which would be south of us. And then actually the terrain went up a little bit, and there was another very large bean field that we could see a little bit into. It wasn't downwind, but it was elevated above us. And the plan was for the deer hopefully to work through that field with the wind in their eye, cut across the drainage, and then we'd get a shot. I figured they would notice our blind once they crossed the drainage and got it into our field, but they would be stopped enough to where I could get a shot. We had another buck. At this point we had another buck that wasn't Rudolph show up behind us.
Yep.
In the elevated area. And
How big was he? Because I could see him, but I couldn't see his rack fully.
I mean, he was bigger than Rudolph, but not
yeah.
much. He was probably a 2-year-old, so he was a little bit wider, a little bit taller,
Yeah,
in velvet.
That's
but
what I thought I saw.
not like a shooter.
He saw us.
I ended up sticking my head out the blind, and he was locked in on that blind from like maybe 70 yards away. He was locked in on the blind early, and I don't know if he saw me just sticking my head out the blind or it was just the fact that it was the blind, but he ended up boogering too. And he took off to what would be the west. I don't think those does ended up coming back.
No,
Did those ever come back?
They stayed way out in the field.
Okay, they stayed way out in the
I
field.
think they bedded in the CRP too. I think I saw him enter there and not come back out.
That would make sense. I kept checking to my south to see if any deer were squirting out of that chunk of CRP, but I never did see any. It doesn't mean they didn't. I just never saw them. And then the encounter of the evening happened. It was probably 10 to 15 minutes before last shooting light, but it was definitely getting dark to where the camera was starting to struggle. I heard a cough in that before mentioned field that was off to our left. I heard a cough. I looked over at Luke. The blind was only open like 1 or 2 inches, like a little slit on that side, just so we could see into that field. I didn't notice any movement. I went back down to looking out in the bean field. Luke ended up a couple seconds later ended up looking back out that slit and was looking to our left, and you saw.
I'm sitting there and I look over our left and I'm like, Caleb, 150 to the left, 70 yards. And like he was way closer than 70 yards.
Yeah, he was closer than 70 yards.
He was super close and he was just deadlocked on us.
He was locked on that blind again.
There's
no way he smelled us, and there was no way he could see us
in
because
there.
it was getting dark and we only had a slit open, so there was no light in the blind. There's no way he saw movement or anything, but he definitely saw the blind itself and was just locked on it. So I just reached down. Actually, I had to set my binoculars down, reach down, grab my bow, and just had my arrow knocked. Luke he managed to get the camera door open, the camera window open, and was hiding the light with his hand. But we were just waiting.
He turned to come towards us exactly like he should have.
Yeah, he was going to take.
And he started walking. And I'm like, Caleb, he's coming right now. And I like lost visual of him. And then we didn't see him for like
There was like probably a
2 minutes.
Yeah, I would say 2 or 3 minute pause where you're just sitting there at the camera waiting. I'm sitting there holding the bow waiting. I'm staring at the cut. So like there's like the drainage ditch. We call it the cut, where there's this drainage ditch. There's 3 or 4 trails that cross the ditch and go into the next bean field, from bean field to bean field, high bean field to low bean field. And I'm just staring. And then I caught movement like by Luke's head. I kind of like glanced over towards Luke's head. Caught movement by Luke's head, and the buck was running through the field away from us. And he was, when I saw him like turn sideways and start moving, he was probably only 20 yards, but he was elevated above us. So I real quick, dropped down, pulled up my binoculars, and watched him run away. And he was a really, really good buck. I don't know if he was actually 150, but definitely
he probably wasn't 150. But
definitely
he was
100,
130,
upper 130, lower 140, class 8, very tall, good mass, out of velvet, polished up antlers, looked very good. A deer that a no doubt shooter tonight. But then the weird part was he stopped 2 or 3 times when he ran away from us and was never looked back at the blind again, and kept looking back towards the south. And they took one snort and hopped off into the river bottom. It's on the other side of the field. So it wasn't a hard spook. He didn't run off tail up, snorting a million times.
I wonder if since the temperature changed so much, if your thermals just dropped down into the drainage, and he was coming across, and then your thermals, and then it's met him. He's like, nope.
Yeah, it definitely could have. Another thing that we talked about on the drive home was that Rudolph buck had come out again maybe 10, 15 minutes prior to that and snorted around a bit in the field. So it might have, he might have been out in that south field.
He might have been curious to see what was going on.
Yeah, that we couldn't see him because of the topography. And when Rudolph was snorting around a little bit, he worked himself over, and then he definitely keyed in on the blind, the fact that there was just this new blind sitting there. And he was above us, looking down at us, which kind of sucks a little bit. But, all in all, it was a great encounter. first hunt of the year. First day of hunting of the year, and we have a shooter buck of that caliber in range. There was no way I could have shot where he was. I would have had to shoot literally through Luke's body, through a 1-inch slit in the blind,
and through
brush. Weeds, uphill. Like it wasn't a shootable situation. If Rudolph hadn't been snorting in the field, that little buck, who's to say that this one might have been able to come in a little bit more calm and wasn't as alert, and would have actually went through the cut and gave us a shot. Hindsight's 50-50 on that, but it feels good just having that encounter. Because, up until then, it's been small bucks and does. Not much to really write home about until, bam, good encounter with a good buck.
Yeah,
on our first
that was
hunt.
awesome.
It felt really good. We're still kind of coming down off that high a little bit, even though as soon as he started running away, I knew that the chance of killing him was over, but it just felt good to have him in range. And I'm glad he didn't smell us. He saw the blind. It gave him some pause, but I'm glad that he never ended up making it downwind of us. He wouldn't have made it downwind the direction he was going either.
No.
It would have been perfect shot. Either 20, 30, or 40 yards, depending on which trail he used to cut across that ditch, but it was fun.
Yeah.
It felt good to see a good buck in the woods that you could shoot.
And it wasn't balls hot.
And it was not balls hot.
It was nice this evening.
It was very
so
nice.
Like we're wearing hoodies inside because the heat's not on. It's that temperature outside.
Yeah, feels good. This is probably the end of the first portion of the podcast. Born Again guys will be showing up here in a little bit. We're definitely probably going to get them on for a minute to tell their story of their hunt. We are going to hunt again in the morning. Me and Luke are, and then after the morning hunt, we are going to help Ethan figure out his stand setup, which ones we're taking, which ones we're leaving. The blinds we're taking or leaving, and then me and Luke will be boogieing back to Ohio on Sunday afternoon, Sunday around noon probably-ish.
Yep.
Ethan will be staying, and I believe the Born Again guys are also staying until Monday. So these guys will be staying here till Monday. They'll be able to get a Sunday night hunt and a Monday morning hunt in, and then they'll be boogieing back to Ohio. So Ethan gets 2 more hunts on us. It is tomorrow after we'll probably do the same thing. We'll hunt until it feels like it ain't time anymore, 8:39. Then we'll regroup and figure out what stands we want to take. We don't have to take them all back because we are planning on possibly coming back next weekend if one of us doesn't kill tomorrow. So
we'll see.
Yeah, there's a lot to come from Kentucky. We might even do 1 or 2 more parts to this podcast to add to it. So stay tuned. Next portion will be up here in just a moment. All right, guys, Deer Shot Podcast, episode 59. We are back, part 2 of this podcast. We recorded part 1 with me and the brothers last night. We ended up getting all real tired and didn't do any podcasting after that when the Born Again guys got back. But I'm sitting here with Kevin and Matt from Born Again Bowhunting. We've been sharing camp with them, and it's deer season, guys.
Yeah.
It's deer camp time.
First camp
of the year.
Pretty excited.
It's gone well, I think. We haven't killed any deer yet.
No, but we've all come close.
Yeah, we've had encounters and stuff, which is a good thing.
And it's only day 1,
Yeah.
I know you guys are heading out, but
half of us.
Yeah. Kevin and I will be here. Ethan, I guess, is sticking around.
Yep.
We'll be here for a couple more days.
You guys are staying a couple more days, you think? Just depending?
Well, what's today? Sunday?
So, today's Sunday.
Yeah, today and tomorrow.
Yeah. It's a good first little camp of the season. It doesn't feel, even though the weather outside is beautiful right now, it doesn't feel quite like deer camp right now. It's still kind of early in the year. It was 90 earlier, but
yeah, the early September season never feels like hunting.
No.
Like that late October, that's when it really starts to feel like, oh, it's here.
Yeah.
we're Ohio guys, so we're used to basically the beginning of October is when hunting season starts. So this extra month early thing is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's not your first rodeo with Kentucky though. You've been down here 3-4 years.
Yeah, I honestly lost count, probably 4 or 5 to be honest. Always try to make a trip down with the guys. It used to be a lot bigger than what it is now with family lives, kids. We're getting older. We don't.
Heard that.
We have the responsibilities that we didn't when we were younger. But every year we've come down, we've killed a buck. Me personally, no, not every year, but like the group has. So we'll
You got a
see.
streak to keep intact here.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens this year. But normally we take a week. The first week of season is normally what we do, and this year it's just going to be a couple days.
Yeah.
Evan and I just decided last minute, kind of let's just go down. But there's an early muzz season and then rifle season, so like I'm not going to eat my tag if I don't kill one right now. I'm okay with seeing what happens the next couple days and then coming back for that early muzz, or maybe even spending a couple days during rifle season down here. So
yeah, you guys got the wheel spinning for us with this early muzz. We kind of knew that this was going to be a long game here, our first year in Kentucky, but we had some high hopes for this weekend, and we already talked about our encounter last night, and Ethan still got a good hunt tonight, to be determined whether he hunts in the morning again. I guess it depends on how he's feeling, but so there's obviously an opportunity for one of our crews to kill deer.
Yeah.
But that early muzzleloader season, I mean, that sounds exciting. I'm not opposed to trying to make that happen. And it's only a couple weeks from now, about a month from now, a month and a half.
What did I tell you? The 19th.
19th, I think.
19th,
Yeah. So that'll be. I'm sure we'll probably be down around sometime around that area.
Yep.
To try to do.
I'll definitely
Kentucky Part 2.
Yeah, if I don't kill, I'll definitely be down for the muzz.
Yeah. Well, me and Ethan are actually, we talked about it last night too. We're actually coming back next weekend, so that'll be Kentucky Part 2, just for a one-night bow hunt, and then that might be Kentucky Part 3. But how's the hunting been for you guys? I know you glassed a good one on Friday night.
Yeah, we glassed a really good one on Friday night before season opened up. There was 3 bucks bacheloring together. He was probably high 30s, low 40s.
Yeah.
I
would say high 30s would be more accurate.
Yeah, I mean a really nice deer for out of state.
Yeah. Would that be the biggest one you've killed in Kentucky? Like your group?
37.
Okay.
Is the biggest.
So
it would be close. Yeah. So we glassed him up on Friday. He was in. So we're hunting just beans. We just have a giant bean farm that we're hunting. And he was in a spot where we could legally get to him, if it were season. So we were kind of excited. Kevin and I, we went to a different spot Saturday morning to just see what was going on. We can glass some other spots. And unfortunately, all of those beans that I didn't realize were browner than brown.
Yeah.
So there was no deer in them.
None at all.
None at all.
Man.
We stayed for an hour and a half, 2 hours, like on a high spot glassing. Didn't see a single. Well, we saw that doe and fawn.
Yeah.
But they weren't in the beans. They were just cruising like the field.
The edge. Yeah, they were just walking the edge. So we kind of wrote that spot off. That it's not worth our time. So then Saturday night, Kevin and I got into an observation sit. And how many bucks did we see, Kevin?
$7 total.
Yep.
But we had a game plan. We're going to do this observation sit. And if we can see a deer come out that we want to shoot, we're going to get down the tree and make a spot and stalk on it.
So the way the property lays out that we can hunt, it's not really good to like set up on that deer. The way it lays, it's not ideal. It lays perfect for like a rifle or a muzzleloader kind of thing where you can shoot 200-300 yards. But with a bow, it just doesn't lay nice to like get into a tree.
It's too big.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we feel about ours too.
Yeah.
It's you're handicapping yourself being stuck to your 40-yard diameter on the side of the field when there's hundreds and hundreds of yards of field line.
Exactly. Yeah. So Kevin's point, it's too big.
Yeah.
It's just way too big. So the plan actually worked phenomenally. We actually saw 2 bucks, probably low 30s, out in a section that we can hunt. So the biggest buck that we saw last night was actually 30, 40 yards over the property line. and he was.
That seems to be a common thing with you.
It's always like that. So, and
too bad you like to toe that line. You know what I mean?
And we were talking about it last night. He was actually in the best spot to spot and stalk. Like Kevin and I were in the tree, and we're like, dude, if we could shoot over the property line, now I could have missed, or he could have caught us trying to sneak up on him. But
the wind was good. We had a shrubbery in the way that we could have put in between us.
Yeah, there was a giant like pine.
Yeah.
That would have been blocking. I mean, we could have got within 30 yards if we were smart.
Yeah.
And as long as I could have kept it together, I feel like that we could have at least threw an arrow at him. And unfortunately, him being over the property line, I'm just like, I'm not about that life. So, and he was really nice. Looked like a 10.
And one thing different about this one than the other ones that we'll get into, he would just feed in this 10-yard area and just stayed there for a long time.
I guess he had his spot he liked.
Yeah.
So he stood up in the middle of the beans.
Okay. He was already bedded in them?
He was bedded in the beans, stood up in the middle of the beans at really early.
Yeah.
Like
first year that we seen.
Like
it was 6
something? 6:30?
A little bit before 6:30.
Okay. Yeah, it was.
Because it was
we said it was an hour before last night when we seen him. Yeah. So he stood up. He'd feed for like 5-10 minutes, and then he'd lay back down. And then he'd stand up 20 minutes later, feed for a little bit, and then he'd move like maybe 10 yards, and then he'd lay back down. But then going back to what we were talking earlier, we had 2 bucks on the property that we could hunt. They came out of this little chunk of timber, and Kevin actually glassed them first. And he's like, "Man, I think there's some good bucks down there." We both threw binos up. We're like, "Yeah, they're shooters."
You said they're like 300-400 yards at that point.
Probably 400 yards.
Far.
Yeah.
So there's no way they saw us. I mean, there was other deer in the field, but what happened was the game plan, like Kevin was talking, we were going to basically jump out of the tree, hit the ground running, and try to get to these deer. And the way the property lays, it's actually lays really good to do that. There's a bunch of little fingers and stuff that kind of go everywhere. So like you can
cover ground quickly.
Yeah,
undetected.
without them seeing. So we did that, and I was a little bit worried when Kevin climbed down the tree first. I lowered my bow to him. My job was to glass them while he was climbing. They didn't have a care in the world. They were just eating. One thing that bothered me was when the last time that I was looking at them from my platform, they were kind of heading towards a direction that we didn't want them to go. And then I put my binos in my harness and like literally jumped over to Kevin's platform and was ready to climb down the tree. And I glassed one more time and I didn't see him.
Yeah.
So there's 2 ways that it could have worked out. They could have went the direction we didn't want them to go, or they could have just hugged the bean line that they were on and we just couldn't see them, and then they would have worked out kind of towards us, which 9 times out of 10, when the deer are back there in that corner, that's what they do. But this one time, so long story short, we climbed down the tree, we ran over there, we the last like 150 yards, we were like real stealthy. We peek around the corner and there's some scrub brush and stuff in our way, and I just stand on my tippy toes to glass, and there's a doe and a fawn and a spike buck out in the field. And I keep tippy toeing around this stuff to just see, can I see more of the field? And they weren't anywhere to be found.
Yeah.
Didn't hear a deer blow, didn't hear, with that doe and fawn and that spike buck in there, I mean, if we would have busted them out, they'd have been gone too.
Yeah.
So we almost got in trouble because we were glassing, and Kevin and I both didn't know what to do. We were like, well, they're not here. Let's just wait a little bit and see. Maybe they went into the brush. They'll come back out. And the stupid doe and fawn, like clockwork, she just starts heading right towards us. And I'm just like, oh, no.
Kind of how we anticipated the bucks to work that field.
So I'm like, oh, no. So I'm like, Kevin, let's tuck into this. There's like some CRP stuff that you can tuck into. And I'm like, let's tuck in here. Of course, she's like at 40 yards coming at us, and we're slowly trying to crunch our way into this CRP. She hears something she doesn't like. She comes over, looks. She never like blew, but she knew that something was up, and she just turned around and kind of like walked away with her fawn.
Yeah.
But then that stupid spike buck, you'd been proud of me. He was full fuzzy.
Ethan almost did it last night. He almost did it.
I was tempted with the full fuzzy, but no.
It would have kept your streak alive.
So to rewind a little bit, my goal has always been, like, my dream is to kill like a nice velvet buck. Like, I don't even care how big. I want a nice velvet buck.
Yeah.
And I've never done it. So that was like the joke was like, I'm gonna kill this spike that's full fuzzy. But he was just a dumb 1.5-year-old, like no clue in the world. Came into 30 yards, just staring at us while we're just looking there. Kevin couldn't really see much because he was behind me, but I'm watching this stupid thing, just like, telescope looking at us, and
just a typical young deer where they're over curious, they want to see what it is, and
so
that's how a lot of them get shot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I think I stood up or moved or something. He saw me and then took off, and then as he took off, actually another forkhorn stepped out into the field. So Kevin and I got a little bit excited, and we thought, well, maybe there's more deer.
Here comes the parade.
Yeah. So we stayed for another 20 minutes. Didn't see another deer, and at this time it was getting close to that legal light.
Mm-hmm.
So we packed it up and we said, all right, let's there's always tomorrow. So we saw 7 bucks, a handful of does, a couple close encounters with deer, but nothing we wanted to shoot. And I guess if we were doe hunting, we'd have done good.
Oh, we could have, yeah.
But,
yeah, that's where we were yesterday too. It's like I could have shot a doe for the content to get some meat rolling and stuff, but it would have burned the spot for the whole weekend, and I wasn't willing to do that. But it sounds like a great, obviously none of us killed, but it was a great first day. You guys go back to that spot tonight?
Yeah,
go right back, same game plan.
That's the best spot we've got. Unfortunately, Kevin and I were talking about this, and we were talking a little bit off air yesterday about it. This spot's in the middle of nowhere, and the deer don't get any pressure at all.
I mean, it's what you want, but it makes it hard.
Nobody goes back there.
Yeah.
Not even the guy that owns it,
no farmer,
no four-wheelers, no kids, no nothing. So when you go back there and they smell your ground scent, man, it's voodoo to them.
Yep.
So you've got 2 or 3 days where they'll tolerate it. But then after that, like on the 3rd day of you walking back there, they're done.
Is there any public near it?
No.
So like our deer that we're hunting, the bucks here, surrounded by public and houses. So I think they're more forgiving. They're obviously going to booger because we've seen it yesterday, but they're going to be more forgiving of some human descent. They're not going to sell human and be gone.
Yeah.
For the whole year. So it's kind of contrasting.
Yeah.
Yours is more of rural Kentucky.
It is. Like we have no phone service. We have no phone service for like 20 minutes while we're driving into the property and out. Like it's just one of them things where it's like it's back in the sticks.
Remote.
Yeah.
Yeah. The property we're hunting isn't exactly like that. But yeah, that's the wrap up on Kentucky. You guys just got back from the Mobile Hunters Expo. How was that experience? I know there's been your guys' podcast channel has all kinds of content about it right now going on. So anyone wants to check that out,
appreciate it.
Their version of the Mobile Hunters Expo, you got at least 3 or 4 podcasts from there.
Yeah, we
already
have,
up.
I think like 7.
We have a total of like 7 or 8.
Okay.
So we're going to release some bonus episodes just so it's not, Mobile Hunter Expo for like till November.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of the stuff that we recorded was at the expo, but it wasn't necessarily about the expo.
It was some of the guest speakers that were
was
there.
just-
I enjoyed the Kaiser podcast.
Yeah.
You had Zach Kaiser on, who's, if you have social media, you're going to kind of know who he is just because of how he is. But I liked him because he was contrasting kind of your guys' style a little bit, and he's very matter of fact about his opinion on things. And we don't share the same opinion on everything, but a lot of stuff he is adamant about is kind of the angle that we play at too. We're expandable guys, mid-body type guys. We don't do the single bevel. We don't do the heavy arrow. That's something that he's adamantly against, which is kind of cool. He doesn't like the ranch fairy.
Nope.
I don't think anybody does.
Well,
it's kind of weird. Like, why does THP hang out with that guy? If his public opinion is dirt, why would you align yourself with him?
I think a lot of people, well, let's put it in this perspective. I think that a lot of people that necessarily, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but let's say that somebody that doesn't have the experience or education on how archery works, I think a lot of guys fall for that rabbit hole of, well, it makes sense, throw the heaviest arrow
Insurance
you can
policy
at
arrow.
them.
Yeah.
Quote unquote plan B, like Ranch Fairy talks about, where, Kaiser, for example, he doesn't care what his arrow weighs, all he wants
That's
is...
why I like him, because I don't even know what mine weighs.
Well,
I have no clue.
To an extent, though, all
he does
wants,
have criteria that he wants to meet.
Yeah.
He wants his bow to shoot 290 to 300.
Yep.
That right, Kev? Is that what it is? And don't quote me on it. Might be a
It
little
was
bit
close to that figure, but yeah, a higher end of the speed.
He wants, let's say to be safe, he wants his bow to shoot from 280 to 300 because that's what he wants his speed to be in order to have the pin gap that he wants. And, he just knows that his arrow will fly good at that feet per second. Where Ranch Fairy doesn't care how fast his bow is shooting. He just wants to throw an axe at the deer.
And to be fair, the Ranch Fairy, he, from what I've seen of his videos, and I've watched a good amount, especially back when he first was there with THP or they first started going there, he's shooting 1-year-old pigs, not 5-year-old Ohio whitetails, pressure-wise. So these deer, we have, back in the day, Isaac went down the rabbit hole. He had a slower bow. He was shooting that Ross Cardiac with a heavy arrow, and he had multiple opportunities at mature bucks, and it didn't go well.
Yeah.
The one only had, the one comically only had 3 legs and was still able to duck and spin the arrow before it got there at like 28 yards.
Yeah.
Because Isaac was shooting 235, 240 feet per second in Ohio at that golden, and this is something Kaiser talked about too, in that golden window of when the sound beats your arrow at that low speed at 30 yards. Forget it.
Yeah.
I mean, the deer is going to duck. You have to guess how much it's going to duck, and that's not a game I like to play.
No, because
guessing how far it's going to duck.
Well, then,
Sometimes they won't duck at all.
Yeah, sometimes
Right.
they don't duck, and then you shoot underneath them.
Well, that bit me last year. I was hunting with my buddy Chad, and it was like our first hunt of the year. It was early October, first hunt together, probably like my second hunt of the year. And we were there to kill does on his farm. It was a doe management hunt. Perfect broadside, whole bunch of does come in. They're at like, my shot was at like 11 yards, and I aimed a little bit low, just instinctively at 11 yards. Well, my bow shoots 290, so
Yeah, you don't need
I
to
just
aim
shot.
low, yeah.
I shot right under her. She didn't duck. She had no chance at ducking. Just right underneath her, skimmed her brisket a little bit.
Yeah.
Mistakes you make, especially early in the season.
Yeah.
You don't think about those things until you start listening to a podcast and it gets the wheels spinning, and now it makes sense. I mean, I like the flat shooting fast bow as well.
Yeah.
I know you're going to lose kinetic energy, but it's not important on a whitetail if you have a sharp tip.
Yep.
So like he said, it don't matter.
Yeah, I actually went. So last year, I will admit, I kind of fell for that rabbit hole, not to the extent of Ranch Fairy, but I was shooting like a 590, 600 grain arrow, which is a heavy arrow, out of a 75-pound bow. So I was getting like 250 feet per second, which was not what I wanted.
No.
It's super slow. You could watch your arrow at 40 yards just like drop into the target. I didn't like it at all. So this year I actually switched to a heavier bow and a lighter arrow, and I'm getting right at that 300 mark. So I'm shooting 29.5-inch draw, 80-pound bow at like a 470 grain arrow, and I'm getting like the high 290s.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
And I'm happy with that because I think that's going to be a really good setup this year. So
stay away from that shoulder.
Yeah.
The shoulder, like he said, the shoulder will screw everybody.
Yeah.
It'll screw everybody. Unless you're Josh Bomar, I guess.
I agree because, it's happened. Yeah. I've been bit before in Indiana with hitting a deer in the shoulder and with that heavy setup.
Yeah.
Your video, it's a good talking point for, whenever we do any media together. That video in Indiana, that 10-point you lost, is a good talking point because you had all the factors that you would want to be able to just punch through a shoulder. You got a close shot, broadside deer, all this, and like the video just literally shows that arrow getting no penetration, and it hit something it was not going to go through. It stopped instantly. It threw the knockoff, right?
It actually bounced off out of the deer.
Yeah, like it threw the knockoff and had reverse energy because it hit something that was not moving.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because usually anywhere in a deer you should slice through to the fletching. You would think, but.
I must have hit him right in the knuckle or something,
and it doesn't take much. I have, to tell my version of like a medical type story. This was 10 plus years ago. It was opening day of deer season in Ohio. I went on a fire call for a kid that was walking back from the woods. It was actually during the afternoon, so I'm not sure what he was doing, but he was walking back from the woods with a crossbow, and he tripped into his left foot tripped into like a gopher hole or something, and he slipped and like dropped his crossbow, and the broadhead buried in his calf like 2 inches just from a slip and fall. Like the crossbow never shot. It was still, the crossbow was still cocked at the scene. Just a slip and a downward fall put the broadhead 2 inches into his calf muscle. Ugh. That's without any shot. So these broadheads today are sharp.
Yeah.
They are, and they're going to go through most meat no problem.
No
But
problem.
that shoulder, that kid probably it probably didn't go all the way through because it probably hit bone, I would assume, on him. But yeah, I mean, they're incredibly sharp. So as long as you stay away from bones, things should happen.
And that's something that I think it's like we're not to give Ranch Fairy any more glory than he already has, but like I feel like Ranch Fairy was telling everybody to just aim for the shoulder, that vital V, and it's like in Kaiser's defense, which I really enjoyed having him on the podcast, he's like, aim 6 inches back from the shoulder, mid body, and that deer's gonna go 60 yards and pile up.
Well, he even said the vitals of a pig are way far forward compared to a whitetail.
Yeah, and deer are kind of like, if you think about it in like bear terms, you're supposed to aim mid body. A bear has vitals farther back. If you just think about that when you're going to draw on the deer, like no shoulder, farther back. I'm going to try it this year and stay. And I usually do stay a little bit farther back because I've been bit by the shoulder high game before real bad. So I have some sting in there. Isaac's been bit by it real bad. So we've had some situations where deer got hit and not killed because we hit him high. Spaniel on our group 3 or 4 times has hit a deer high. He shouldered a deer. Actually, that's something we didn't talk about, but a couple years ago, Spaniel also shouldered a deer on a 20-yard broadside shot. He was using a rage, I believe, something along those lines.
Yeah.
No penetration. I mean, same as your shot. No penetration. The deer just ran off. And we never found the deer. There was a blood trail for maybe like 80 yards, sparse, and then nothing. There's a video of it in our one compilation. We didn't really make a lot on that video because it didn't have a resolution, unfortunately. But we've all been there. Is the point. And getting away from the shoulder might be something that we should start to kind of remember when we're at full draw.
I mean, ultimately, I don't care what setup you're running. I mean, that's God designed that deer to have that armor there to protect his vitals. So I mean, I would say if you're running a good setup, I'd say most of the time it's probably going to get through. But there is a chance that it's not going to get through, and you don't want that. Yeah, you don't want that to happen on your number one target or something.
And I was thinking about this when we were listening to that podcast. I think recently in social media, and it has nothing to do with the Ranch Fairy and THP, but I think there's been a push to, as bow hunters and, with all the anti-hunting and all this crap going on, we are trying to kill the deer as ethically as possible. So that's why everyone wants that heart, lungs, the deer is dead in 25-second shot. Mm-hmm. But the liver, back lung, upper gut area will kill the deer every single time.
If you're smart.
When you tell people, there's the whole point of like, well, I shot him a little far back, liver, maybe one lung, we're going to get him tomorrow. Oh, that deer's suffering overnight. It doesn't die for 4 to 6 hours. That might be true. But we can't be perfect all the time. Yeah. And there's a better margin. I'd rather shoot the deer and know he's going to for sure die and us recover him than take these shots that will kill the deer super fast or won't kill him at all. Mm-hmm. That tight shoulder shot.
I think, like you were saying, that Kaiser has his opinions and, he's set in his own ways. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, during the podcast, he made a comment of like, are we here to watch the deer, or are we here to kill the deer? Because he made a comment of like, if there's a 200-incher and all he's got is a gut shot, quote unquote, he's taking it.
Yeah.
And that's
are you taking that?
Probably not.
Are you taking that?
No.
200 inches. In the past, I've passed up deer because all I had was their belly sticking out.
Yeah.
There was one in Indiana a couple years ago that I'll remember forever. It would have been my 3rd buck in 3 states, and all I had was belly and neck. So I'm like, I can't, his shoulder was perfectly behind a tree. Like 35 yards, public land, and I didn't take the shot, but I would be more apt to take that shot now, seeing what happened with Luke last year, with the big expandables we use in this knowledge. I would be, if I'm not talking straight white belly. I'm talking like mid-body shot.
Yeah, mid-body.
Because we thought Luke's buck last year, his big one that he shot, the video made it look like it was perfect pocket, like everything was great. When we ended up getting to the deer and really studying the video, he actually shot him liver and one lung back farther. Died in like 70 yards. Yeah. Blood trail like you wouldn't believe. A downward angle with the broadhead like that. He's using Schwackers, I believe. I mean, that deer was hammered, and he shot it back a little bit. So I'm more willing to take that shot now. Obviously, I don't want to put it in front of the back leg, but if I can get mid-body, mid-center and punch that liver on a 200-inch buck, I'm probably taking that shot.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, truthfully, I
Like
don't
he said,
know.
are we here to watch deer? Or are we here to kill
I
deer?
mean, to his point, that's why I brought it up. Like, to his point, yeah, it makes sense. Like,
If-
he was talking about, you brought up the point of, oh, well, the deer's suffering. And he also
Yeah.
brought that point up in the podcast. And he's like, are we here to watch deer, kill deer? Ultimately, your goal is to kill the deer. How you kill the deer is, it's like, does it really matter?
Take thy stick and thy arrow and go out into the field, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing in there about make sure it dies within 30 seconds.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
mean-
you killing the deer.
I would say if you're going to make that shot, make sure your property is big enough where
Yes,
you can
there's a
recover
lot
it,
of-
or if
yeah.
you know you can get access neighboring properties
Yeah,
to recover.
there's a lot. If you're hunting the 4 acres in a city lot, I advise against the belly shot 12-hour death.
yeah.
If you're hunting big public land or your own 300-acre farm, there's different things at play there.
Yeah.
But, I
With
mean,
the ability to use drones and stuff too, you can go check that deer at midnight and he might be expired
Yeah.
way sooner than you think, and that brings up, I know, we don't have to go down the drone rabbit hole, but
that's a fine line.
that's non-invasive tracking to make sure the deer is dead. Like,
Yeah.
I know we all have our opinions on drones, but if you shoot a 200-inch buck, are you going to exhaust everything to find him?
I mean, if he was 200 inches, yeah, probably.
Even
Let's-
a 150.
Let's be
even a
honest.
150,
I mean, let's be honest, probably.
Yeah. You don't
know?
you don't want to have to do that, but I mean,
As much as I'm against it, yeah, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole because everybody has different opinions on drones. But to close out this topic of the gut shooting, quote unquote, I would just say for anybody listening, just be
don't aim for guts.
Yeah, don't.
That's
aim
not
for
kind of what
guts.
we're going for
Yeah.
here.
But
We're aiming for liver.
be ethical, I guess.
Yeah.
Like if you ethically think that you can kill that deer and you have, like Kevin said, you have the property, the neighbors, that that if you shoot that deer, he's going to run 100 yards and bed down, and that you're not going to bump him on the way out. I mean, I guess all I'm saying is maybe just go listen to the Kaiser podcast because he does a good job explaining it, and I've not experienced the mid body, kind of shots. So
Like
So yeah, that's on Born Again Bowhunting's podcast. They have an entire episode. Kaiser talks about arrows, broadheads, shot placement, all that stuff.
Yep.
Very in depth.
Yep.
It's good. I just had something I wanted to add to that, and now I lost my train of thought about shooting the deer. I don't remember.
I don't know. We were
don't
talking
know. I
about
don't-
livers. We were talking about.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah, we can move on from that. So the rest of the Mobile Hunters Expo, I guess, to finish up that storyline,
I thought it went really well.
are you going to do it again in the future?
I mean, if we're invited back, yeah. Which from talking to Chris and Josh, I don't think there'd be an issue there.
yeah.
Jerry, who's not here, he really nailed the booth for us.
Yeah, it looked good. I'm sending you guys a message like, man, that booth looks good.
Yeah, so we appreciate that, and I think that was like the consensus at the show. Like everybody that would walk by would stop by and be like, "Dang, you guys' booth looks nice."
Did a good job,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and it was cool. Like we had the table, or we had the beer barrel, or whatever it is.
A whiskey barrel.
Yeah,
Bourbon barrel,
thank
charred
you.
oak bourbon barrel.
Thank you. we had the whiskey barrel, and then
A tabletop, and that's what we
tabletop.
podcasted
It
on.
was
That
cool.
was pretty cool.
It was cool. You get a lot of people to sign it. You run out of space on that thing or what?
So I would say a third of it is taken up.
Okay.
And then we have the remaining of that top, and if
We're gonna spin
continue
it,
to do it,
yeah.
we can flip
Yep.
it up.
We're gonna keep spinning it. So every show we go to, people just sign their names.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say now.
Go ahead.
If you look back and take your whole entire bow hunting career, and you can include does in this, 80 to 90% of our shots on animals end up really good. But if you really narrow down to your biggest bucks or all the bucks you've killed, there's a lot of things that happen when you're shooting at a deer. So obviously you go into the hunt planning on a perfect double lung shot, but throughout the hunt and you look at your history of the bucks on your wall, I got one that I shot in the neck. I got two that were perfect. I got, there's always the story of what happened with that deer. The arrow ends up going where you didn't want it to go. So we're still playing a game and rolling the dice every time you go in the woods hunting. So there's planning, there's what you think is ethical and what you can do, and then there's really what happens.
Of course, yeah.
So there's a lot of gray area there in bow hunting. I wish I could hit where I was wanting to hit on every. You want to double lung every single deer broadside, but that's just not reality.
It's not realistic.
There's just too many factors that can take part, and it's just not going to be the outcome that you want maybe all the time.
Yeah.
Or shot placement.
And then, like you were saying, Caleb, it's a wild animal that's reacting however he or she wants to react. So
they
it's like-
react differently in
Yeah.
different places. Those deer in West Virginia aren't getting bow hunted. So they are getting bow hunted that we hunt down there, but they're not reacting the same to a bow shot as the deer here in
around us.
Ohio that have been
Yeah.
shot at 5 times already with bows. And then you come down to public land here in the mountains, and human scent all of a sudden is completely foreign. So the deer are way edgier. You got to know your game. You got to know your scenario.
It's the classic. It's all situational.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
So what do you guys have in store for this fall? We'll finish it with that. What's your guys' plans? I'm sure we'll get you on the podcast again here in the next month or two on some topic, but we got a lot of stuff that's going to happen in the next 30 days, deer hunting wise. Ohio opens, and
We're just going to Indiana again. I know you're going to go to Pennsylvania and stuff beforehand, right?
Possibly.
are you doing that hunt again?
Possibly.
Really?
Possibly. Yeah.
Why don't you come to Pennsylvania with us? I mean, seriously. Why don't you come to Pennsylvania and hunt pure public land?
You're going later though.
Yeah, we're going when it's going to be good. Well, hopefully
that's the problem.
Hopefully we can kill before that in Ohio and not have to worry about stuff.
See, that's the problem. I've already got my late, with Indiana, my last week of October and then a couple days of November is already tied up.
Yeah.
So if I go to PA on
top of that,
then I don't have. Here I am going to bash you again on your schedule, which I'm jealous of. I don't have the luxury of.
It's not as beautiful as it used to be. I got this little 14-pound thing now that keeps me a little bit more grounded. But
I really
understand.
don't, yeah.
I do understand that. Not to interrupt, but the reason we're going then. A, the bear season's open. B, if you're like a hunt like this, if you don't have a good spot and some really good intel, we're gonna be beating our head against the wall for trying to hunt PA in October. Just hoping that buck walks down this ridge that Ethan's got on cell camera 4 times in the last month and a half, So that's a lot of planning, camping, hunting, license, all the stuff you've talked about before, just for the hope a deer walks down a ridge. But if we go in November, it's all bets are off. It's rut. So all you got to do is find where there's deer tracks because that means a doe came through and then just hunt it. It's a lot. It does make it easier for the out-of-state guys.
And I think that's why we wanted to move the Indiana camp because the first year that we all went together was like middle of October. And then
we came back around the 25th, I think is when we came back to Ohio.
So the next year we pushed it back a little bit later, but still.
Right around November 1st we came back.
I don't even think it was that
maybe
late.
even
we came back
earlier.
We could hunt Halloween here.
Yep. Okay, so 30th.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then this year we're actually we're not getting down there till the 28th and we're leaving like the 3rd of November.
Yeah.
Something like that. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, we've always just felt like we've been off by a week.
Yeah.
With either temperature or time or something like that.
I've done, like I said, we've done all the different Indiana hunts. I've done everything from the October 17th through November 8th or 9th. And if you hit cold weather, deer die. If you don't hit cold weather, you're just camping with bows. I mean, that's literally all it is. So, I would like to join you guys on that hunt this year, and I'm going to keep it there. If the weather is good, we'll be there, and if it's hot, you guys have fun with your hot camping, Yeah. And we'll just go. I'll sit at home or something at that point because I just don't want to hunt heat for like the 4th year in a row on public land.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it enjoyable.
And then in your defense, the years because we always had gone down with your guys' work schedule, you had like 3/4 of the week. We had the full week, maybe the weekend before.
Yep.
And we always got lucky, and within that 9-day period that we were there, we always had 3 or 4 days of cold.
Right.
But it seemed like every time you guys showed up, you would be at the tail end of that cold front, and then it'd be 90 degrees.
Yeah.
The year Isaac killed his buck, I mean, I just remember it was such a beautiful first morning for us all. Isaac kills all that. The rest of the week was hot. Mm-hmm. No one's seeing any deer. You had your encounter at the 10-point that year.
Yep.
That was the only buck you guys were on, I think, that year. Did you? No, you killed the one before we got there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So
but that was when it was cold.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's weather dependent, but I would enjoy being able to come up, throw my cot in the living room for a couple days with you guys if I can.
We would love it. Yeah. We'd love for all you guys to
go. We'll check that out. Ethan's kind of on the line with that too. I'm sure he'll be with me if we go. I wouldn't imagine seeing Luke or Isaac on that trip, but I'll be able to get Ethan out there with me for sure if we come. Yeah. And then you're not doing anything else? No Western stuff this year? None of that?
Nope, I didn't. I'm going to do every other year out west.
It's a smart play.
So
It's a smart play.
We were actually talking about that on the way here. I was like, so when are you going to buy a tag? Because Kevin, not to talk for you, but you've been out twice, but you've never had a tag because you've always gone with somebody, filmed, or just like went for the experience.
Yep. So the first year I went out, a guy got a tag in Idaho, so it's limited draw tags.
Oh, yeah.
So I went
We're
out
familiar with
as a buddy with him and to just for the experience. And then last year I
Was
went
that the black powder hunt or no?
No, that was
Isaac did like an open season or an open site black powder only elk Idaho draw of some kind.
Yeah.
It was kind of a weird one, but
this was archery only at this point in time.
Okay.
So I went
It was
for
in
that,
a good unit too.
and it was at a very good unit. And the first couple days, just like kind of Indiana, it was colder. The bulls were talking like crazy, bugling on every ridge. We just unexperienced and we didn't know how to get it done. We weren't aggressive enough. Took a year off. Went last year to Colorado with some buddies, and it was hot then too, kind of. And it's just like, we didn't have any success or anything. We felt like they were there early season because there was all kinds of semi-fresh sign and stuff, but nothing like that week or anything.
You
like
guys
that.
were like a couple weeks behind them.
Yeah. So like if we would have went opening, we probably would have been in the.
What do you think that you think just from the pressure of hunters pushed them back?
Yeah, and at that point in time, we didn't get too far off of like the access road, trailhead, that type of stuff. We kind of hung around, this bubble, and I think a lot of guys did the same thing.
yeah.
So,
Colorado's the Wild West.
yes.
Like when it comes to that kind of thing. But
When the first night we were there glassing, I glassed up probably a dozen elk, but they were 4 miles away as the crow flies.
And that one bull was really nice.
Yes. And we've seen 2 or 3 different groups of people down in that valley. So, like, we didn't feel like we could push past them to get to those elk. So we just kind of bounced around and went to a different location that looked similar on the map.
And then,
and there was no pressure.
Have you guys ever experienced this? I won't drop his name because I don't want him to feel, anything, any sorts of, whatever. But they had a guy in camp with him that had altitude sickness. That once he got to a certain level, like he couldn't go anymore. So they had to stay at this. Level.
Spaniel has that on our group. He went to Utah with them 2-3 years ago, and he had a hard time up 9, 10, 12,000 feet. I've only been at 12,000 feet a couple times in my life, and I've done it via car and stuff. So I wasn't there for very long. And I did Haleakala in Hawaii, which is 14,000 above the clouds, like high. I felt fine. I was only up there for 3 hours, drove back down. So I don't know how it would affect me over a length of time. But yeah, Isaac doesn't get it. Dylan doesn't get it. Ethan's been high. I think he climbed some of those mountains in Japan. I don't know how long he spent up there. So it doesn't seem to affect us any, but we have a guy in our group, Matt, it affected him really bad. There's some other hunters locally I know of that have had these aspirations of going out west, and they just can't do it. They get up there and shut down.
That's what happened to your buddy.
It was
basically.
like, so we went from Denver at 8,000 and some feet to the mountains that were 10,000 for the first night's camp. So we hiked in, a mile and a half, whatever it was, I don't remember, to 10,000 feet. And that next morning, even setting up camp, he was winded and stuff. But, elevation, we can't train for that here.
No.
Plus, you're hiking in with, 60 pounds and everything else. You're excited. You set up camp, you can get winded. But then the next morning, he was just like nauseous and just like headaches and just couldn't function. So we had to just back it down to like that 7,000 to 8,000, and
that's where you stood.
So they hung out there, and he was fine. Me and his cousin went and just hiked around a lot more. We could go up to 10, going up to 11 something, and we're fine. But it just wasn't worth it for the whole camp to suffer at 10,000 feet. So we had to back it down. But I feel like the elk were higher and back farther. But we couldn't do it.
And it's not like you're not just going to leave one guy behind and be like, well, you're puking, so we'll see you in a week.
Right.
Like
that wouldn't be fun for camp.
No.
So there's an old group of Chatham guys, and they don't do it much anymore. I think they're finally done, but old timers in Chatham, they're in their 70s now. Back in the day, 80s, 90s, they went to Colorado every year for like 3-4 weeks and just did the public land rifle, elk hunting camp. And they had altitude problems too, but their literal solution was you get up there, you set up your camp, and you just spend 2 days laying in your cot puking.
Yeah.
Just spend 2 days being absolutely miserable.
And then you get used to it.
And then you kind of start getting used to it, and then you're there for 3 weeks and everything's fine. But it was known that some guys are going to have to go up there and just lay in bed for 2 days. This was 80s and 90s before any technology, any of that stuff. So you just drove out there, took your 4-wheelers up to the huge canvas tent, they had camp cooks and the whole 9 yards, like the old school stuff. And it sounds like a really fun time. And I know those guys want to do it again with some of the younger generation, but they're in their 70s and things are changing. So it's going to be tough. But yeah, you basically had the bends for 2 days and that was that,
But if you're there for 3 weeks, you can sacrifice 2 days.
Playing footsie with your bare feet underneath the table. Look at them sausage toes. Maybe I'll crop those out of the video so people don't have to see your toes. But yeah, I mean, we're at 40 minutes. I mean, is there any more you guys want to chit-chat about before we hit the woods? Or
no, I think Indiana's the last bit. We don't have anything planned late. Maybe, like we were talking, we might do something next year out west. But if we do that, we need to start planning now.
Yeah.
And we haven't, so we'll see.
Have you been buying? Do you guys buy points and all that? Have you been collecting?
Kevin and Jarrett do.
Yeah, me and Jarrett have been.
Isaac's been getting on me. I have some somewhere. There's some states, if you don't buy them consecutively, they dump them, which is kind of weird. I don't like that.
I'm not sure about that. Every state's kind of different.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to follow everything.
I have been buying points in Iowa, though. I have 3 points in Iowa right now.
Joey P, Wild Time TV, he's going to Iowa late season muzzleloader this year.
So, I thought about
he drew that same tag or whatever that Jacob Emery did that late season.
I thought about putting in for it next year. But at that 4, but then I'd have 4 points. So you might as well just wait for the archery, because I was told that if you have 2 or 3 points, you have a good likelihood of drawing like a gun tag. Mm-hmm. But archery is like 5 or 6. So it's like, if I have 4 next year, do I waste those 4 years on a gun tag, or do I just wait a couple more years and get my archery tag?
Do you have any access to private?
Yes and no.
Because I know a lot of guys, if they're going to put a draw in for Iowa, they do the rifle because it gives them more of an option on public land. Yeah. Because the public land in Iowa, while there are lots of good public land in Iowa, the stuff that you're watching on TV where guys are killing 170s like Uncle Jay, it's all private. He's hunting private 1,000-acre farms. Yeah. Exclusive or only 1 or 2 guy access, and having that great hunting on private. He's not going out to public land and whacking a 170.
Yeah, I've got some connections near like Pella, which would be that.
I don't know anything about the state.
Well, that'd be like the southeastern corner, the Mecca.
Like where we're watching right now.
Yeah, so I've got some connections in Pella, and they've never officially offered to come down hunt, but they've always kind of like, well, if you're in the area, let us know. So
you'd have to get a serious conversation before putting in for your points.
I would have to be like, hey, are you legitimately going to let me hunt your farm, or are you just talking, being nice? So we'll see.
Yeah, because you got to iron that out before you go out. And Jay, when Uncle Jay does his stuff, he goes out there month in advance, hangs a bunch of stands, cameras. He does the whole.
Yeah, I think if I did have private too, I'd want to go out there at least for one scouting mission, either in the late spring or. I don't know if I'd want to do it early summer. I'd probably have to go know the year before, but then you don't know if you get drawn. So it's like, who knows?
It's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah, but.
All right, guys, we are probably going to wrap this up because we need to hit the woods and do some scouting, get Ethan set up for tonight. And me and Luke are going to hit the road back for Ohio. Hopefully Ethan and you guys can kill tonight.
I'll send you a picture of that big
I hope. I hope. I hope there's some killing in camp tonight. That would be very nice. Oh. But episode 59, it has been enjoyable. It's been fun. Deer season is here. Everything you see from here on out is going to be updates on what we're doing season-wide. So it is time.
Cool.
It is time. Cool.
Appreciate it.
Deer Shop's out, guys.
Peace.
$4. I got brisket.